Hey, Rob. When you started off saying Luke chapter 1, I thought, oh, I might have to switch to a Christmas message today. It is good to see you all. Wonderful to see you. And just thanks for being flexible. As Pastor Dave said, we kind of get the best of both worlds. So we get to worship in comfort in an air-conditioned environment, but then still enjoy being in the outdoors for our lunch. And so thank you for being accommodating and for our team for being able to flex like that at the last moment. I had a bit of a frantic morning myself, not because of any of the changes we're making here, but well, let me start this way. Have you guys ever seen a show on television called Moose Meat and Marmalade? Okay, all right. See, I don't watch much of the primetime stuff, but this is good. It might be a TVO or something like that. But Moose Meat and Marmalade. So it's an Englishman here in Canada from Britain, very Englishman-like, if that means anything to you, and an Indigenous man, a Cree elder. They're different shape and size, different worldviews, different experiences. So moose meat being the Indigenous element and marmalade being the British thing. And on this particular episode, there's a farm that they're visiting. It's having a problem with raccoons. Raccoons are stealing all the duck eggs. So they've gone from like 36 eggs a day to 24 to 12 to nothing. And it's killing chickens. So they call in a pest control guy with those, have a heart tender traps to start dealing with the raccoons. But as is not uncommon on this show, they try different foods. So the Cree fellow decides, I'm going to make you raccoon. And I don't know how that sounds to you, because I think of critters that eat diapers and, whatever's in the garbage dump, whatever's in the trash. But these are obviously well-fed rural raccoons eating eggs and fresh poultry every day. Well, so they did this. He prepared the raccoon, and what he basically did was he skinned it and soaked it in salt water overnight, I guess to tenderize it or do something to it. And then he boiled it. But it ended up on the grill like pulled pork, with barbecue sauce and everything, like pulled raccoon sandwich on a bun. But the Englishman tried a piece. He didn't want to, but when it was finished boiling, he pulled a little chunk off and bit into it. He said, this is actually good. You're going to think I'm going to say, tastes like chicken, right? But no. He said it tasted like turkey. So who knew? But the reason I connected with this so well, I think Claudia saw the preview, and she said, Jim, we got to watch this, because I'm going through raccoon, Hell, at the moment with my chickens. And I've lost a fair number of birds. About a week ago, I caught my first raccoon. I thought, okay, that's good. I got him. The next day, 2 more dead chickens. Just, mostly wasted, mostly not consumed. So I said it again. I caught another one. Cheryl loaned us her night camera, her motion-activated weatherproof thing, and we set that up out there. And I think the next night we saw 4 of them crawling over the coop at once. And they are trying to exploit everything. They're hanging by one hand, yanking on chicken wire, trying to loosen what they can. I've caught 6 so far. And this morning, I caught 1, but I know there's still 2 out there because I saw them. So, and when I catch it, I prefer to release it. I'm not going to say that's always what's happening or going to happen, but, because I'm not happy. Like, this is not fun. It's, at least the chickens, it's over, and, but for me, it's been torment. And so long story short, I caught a raccoon this morning, and they're very good at finding their way back. And I've done some research on that. And the suggestion is 10 to 15 miles. 25 kilometers, so I did a 25-kilometer round trip and released it in some good soul's cornfield. And we'll see. As far as I know, 2 to go. As far as I know. That's what the camera's captured. I'm frustrated. And I was thinking, and it's been a season, it's been a couple of weeks where perhaps you've had this. We shouldn't really be like this, but we're human, and our reflex is, you have a day where several things in a row go wrong, and you're almost like, oh yeah, this is just perfect. Thank you. Like, what's going to be next? And, it's not a cancer diagnosis or anything, right? It's just a buildup of little things that accumulate, and you get frustrated and stressed and anxious. And how often do you suppose Jesus got frustrated? I mean, obviously, the Son of God, no frustration at all, right? No anxiety whatsoever. But it's an interesting thing. I won't tell you my count, but as you go through the Gospels, you can see a number of occasions where Jesus got frustrated. One where he got very, very angry, 2, actually. But where he got frustrated, not with raccoons, but with human beings. And we see from Scripture that he got frustrated with Peter on more than one occasion, right? And if you watch the episode this past week, here's a good thing. Because our text today, the one that Rob read a moment ago, Peter makes a good choice. Peter makes a brilliant decision in this particular episode, in this particular text. But, it does get frustrating at times. I heard about a pastor who switched careers. He said, that's it, I'm done in the ministry. Forget it. And he became a funeral director. And somebody asked him, why did you become a funeral director? And he said, because now when I straighten people out, they stay straight, right? And, I get that. Sometimes it's a win-win, though. Drove past a little place once when I was rural in Kentucky and had a sign out front. It said, John Tucker, veterinarian / taxidermist. Either way, you get your pet back. So there's a bit of a win-win. But before I go any further on this, I'm going to give you the very first point. And maybe you need to hear this today. God's greatest blessing often comes at our lowest moment. God's greatest blessing often comes at our lowest moments. In verse 5, Peter says, Master, we've worked hard all night. We haven't caught anything. And man, it had been one of those nights. Now, of course, the TV show takes liberties, some creative imagination on the kinds of trouble that Peter is getting himself into financially and with his wife and all of those things. But in one of those nights, futile, fruitless, all night long, up and down the shores of Galilee, casting their nets, pulling them up, finding them empty. And they pulled out all their bags of tricks. They knew this water well. They were professional fishermen. They did it day in, day out. They had chummed the waters. They'd gone to the usual places, and no luck whatsoever. But this isn't a fishing trip like you or I would take. The stakes are very high for Peter. This is subsistence labor. This is day to day. You don't know where your next meal's coming from, where your next dollar's coming from, your next denarii, whatever you're using in this particular case. But it is a rough, tough, difficult life. Most of the world population lived that kind of a life, until the last century or so. We're finding more disruptive change and less job security is a fact in our world today now, more than it has been for a generation or two. But this was a big deal. Debts, a family, pressures, anxieties. It's now morning, and all they have to show for the night's labors are weeds that are caught in the nets. That's it. They're pulling them in, finding them empty. And so as they were cleaning their nets, they saw a crowd coming along the shore. The crowds were pressing against a man. Everyone was trying to press in. Everyone was trying to get close. Everyone wanting to touch him. And so this man steps into one of the boats, and he calls the owner Simon, and he said, cast out from the shore just a little bit. So Simon does this, and Jesus, in order to escape the crowd, got there in the boat, and he began teaching them just from off the shore. And he began to teach them the things of God. And there's no doubt that Simon was listening with intense interest as he heard this man give words of hope, words of meaning, words of comfort, insights into the kingdom, words of a God who loved man and was concerned for man's salvation. He has finished his lesson. The people are enthralled with the truths they have learned. And now this man turns to Simon and he says, now move out a little bit into the deeper water. Push off into the deep and let out your net for a catch of fish. And you'll notice that Peter's response, and I know how mine would be, was kind of maybe polite accommodation, right? Polite accommodation. It was as Peter said, you're a good teacher. You're good you stick to what you know and don't tell me how to do my particular thing. I really enjoyed the things you taught us about God. That was fascinating. You're a great teacher. Obviously somebody special, but I'm a fisherman. This is what I do. And you may know things about God and teaching, but I know about fish, and this isn't really the time of day that you catch fish. And we fished all night. We did all the things right, and we caught nothing. It was a futile, fruitless night. I know the habits of fish, and this is not the time of day to be doing any fishing. But nevertheless, because you say so, I'll let down the net. Because you say, he was just sort of accommodating, being polite. He admitted his own failures, that they had failed. They'd failed to catch fish. They'd come home empty-handed. And maybe you've had one of those days where everything seemed to go wrong. And at the end of the day, you look back at it and you say, wow, did I even accomplish anything? I think I moved backwards today instead of forwards. And that was the kind of day. Nothing has come out of the day's efforts. So now this teacher, who's probably never caught a fish in his life, is instructing a world-class fisherman how to catch fish. And even though Peter mildly objected, he did obey the command. In the King James, it says, nevertheless, at thy word. Nevertheless, at thy word, I will let down the net. It was obedience of faith. It was obedience of faith. Now, I read one commentator who said that it was obedience of blind faith. I'm not so sure about that, because when you read the Gospels, if you study them, you'll know that Peter has met Jesus before. There has been at least one encounter, because Jesus called Andrew, and Andrew went and got Simon Peter, right? So we know there was already some familiarity with Jesus. Maybe he'd seen miracles work. Different commentators dispute what the chronology is when Jesus healed Peter's mother-in-law. Was this before or after this moment? But I think it takes liberties to say that this was just complete blind faith. Peter had to obviously have some awareness of Jesus and his ministry. But the second point is this: God rewards because you say so faith. It's the right thing, not because my mind tells me that it's logical, but because you did it. It's like the centurion. Just say the word. Just say the word, and you don't even have to come. Your servant will be healed. Just say the word. My mind tells me there's no fish around here today. But at your word, so verse 6 and 7, but because you say so, I will let down the nets. When they had done so, they caught such a large number of fish that their nets began to break. So they signaled their partners in the other boat to come and help them, and they came and filled both boats so full that they began to sink. All right? So that's where we are. It was obedience in faith. He looked at the command of Jesus as foolish in his own estimation, and yet to accommodate, he would do it. But the result of his obedience, and when they had done this, they immediately enclosed so great a number of fish that the nets began to break. Peter had never seen a catch like this in his lifetime, and he was excited. And of course, being a fisherman, this is a dream come true. Sounds like it's not a make your day kind of catch. It might be a make your month kind of a catch. And he is so excited with the success that he doesn't immediately realize what's going on here, what the significant part of it is. And he whistles and he calls for James and John, his partners, who are still on the shore with their boat. And they go out with their boat and they start hauling in fish. And now there's so much fish that the boats actually begin to sink. The nets are tearing. It's too much. And when I say God rewards because you say so, faith, let's not miss the bigger point here, because this is not about Jesus, God is some genie in the bottle who's going to just jump out and give you your 3 wishes. Okay? There's more going on here than just that. In the Gospel of John, John points to 7 signs or 7 miracles, and he says, these miracles do what? They attest to the deity of Jesus. They attest to who Jesus claimed to be. They mark him out as the Messiah. Miracles are a sign. It's not just to indulge Peter or make his month financially. It's saying something about the nature of Jesus. And suddenly Peter caught on. This man is no ordinary teacher. And I believe at that moment, Peter got the first glimmer of light concerning the truth about Jesus. That glimmer of light that later burst forth in full revelation when in Caesarea Philippi, Jesus said, "Who do you say that I am?" And Peter said, "Thou art the Christ, the Son of the living God." This is a precursor to that moment. It's the first glimmer of that coming to Peter. This man is not just a man. There's something wonderful about him. There's something extraordinary about him. And the beginning of the revelation that Jesus was indeed the Messiah, that revelation to his own heart began when he saw the fruit, when he saw the result of obedience demonstrated by power in Jesus. Obedience to the command of Jesus. Peter's response was that he fell at Jesus' knees and said, "Go away from me, Lord, for I am a sinner. I am a sinful man." It's interesting that in coming to the recognition of who Jesus was and is, Peter also came to the recognition of what he is. Of what he is. You never truly see yourself until you see yourself in the light of Jesus and the recognition of who Jesus is. A man, when he has a true encounter with God, also has an encounter with himself. It's inevitable. We live in a false ideal of ourselves. You know, that the Bible speaks about those who deceive themselves. And, you know, we look in the mirror sometimes and we come away with a higher opinion than we really are. You know, I'm not really as bad as I appear. You see, it's the circumstances that are doing this to me. I'm frustrated. You know, it's the circumstances. Or it's the spouse you saddled me with. You know, I could have been somebody if I wasn't tied to this husband or this wife. Or it's, you know, it's this thing. It's the I was born in poverty, or it's this challenge or this impairment. And we make excuses for those things. And so we have this kind of false view of ourselves. But when you see yourself in the light of God, it's revelatory. Things are different. We read in Isaiah that he said, "In the year that King Uzziah died, I saw the Lord high and lifted up, sitting upon the throne. His glory filled the temple. And I said, woe is me, for I am a man of unclean lips. I dwell amongst a people of unclean lips." He saw himself in the light of God. Here's Peter in the recognition of who Jesus is, falling on his knees, saying, "God, if you see somebody, a man or a woman, who claims to be a self-made person and they don't need anybody else, you can put it down that this person has not yet met Jesus. They have not yet had a real encounter with the living God in truth. And there is more hope for the tax collector, the drunkard, and the prostitute to enter the kingdom of heaven than there is for that person. It's not until you see the truth about yourself, that you will call out to God in his mercy and his grace. And our problem is that we're usually looking at each other in the light of the other person. So, compared to so-and-so, and I got to admit, when I step out of the shower and look at myself in the mirror with a 40-watt bulb, and if there's enough fog and steam on that thing, I say, looking good. But you don't want that mirror on you, at least I don't, in the full glaring light of day, right? I look pretty good in some circumstances, but in the light of Jesus, well, it's devastating. It's devastating. And when you look, when you see yourself in the light of Jesus Christ and you're seeing truth manifest, with Simon, there comes this acknowledgement, as we all must, this recognition, I am a sinful man. So Peter says, depart from me, a sinful man. But Jesus' answer to him was this, fear not, because from now on, you're going to catch men. You're going to catch people. As soon as Peter acknowledged his sin, Jesus was able to deal with it. He was able to help him. He was able to pardon him and to cleanse him. And not only that, to call him to a higher purpose and a higher vocation. No longer will you catch fish, Peter. From now on, you're going to catch men and women. I'm always amazed and blessed over the life of my ministry to see the people that God has chosen, to see the men and women that he has chosen to serve his church, the men I've seen who are called into pulpit ministries that become powerful evangelists, powerful preachers of the name of Jesus, who were, he could just say this, God doesn't always choose who I would have chosen. He doesn't always choose the elite, the fashionable, the best looking, the preacher in the skinny jeans and the hipster clothing. Not necessarily. They're quite often the losers, the brawlers, the low, the uneducated, drug addicts. And we see when we read the book of Acts that Peter here is now fulfilling the calling of God. He's fulfilling the calling of God. In the second chapter of Acts, as Peter is preaching to the multitudes, some 3,000 people respond and are baptized that day. He casts out the net, 3,000 people coming to Christ. And then you get into the fourth chapter again, and you see Peter fulfilling it once more. He casts out the net, and it says now the number was over 5,000 men. Perhaps with women and children, it was a greater number than that. But the commission of Jesus is being fulfilled. You're no longer going to catch fish, Peter. You're going to catch men and women and think for a moment of the thousands and thousands of men over the centuries who have spent their lives fishing this little Sea of Galilee, this lake, if you will, abundant in fish. Still many who fish it today with small boats using methods not much different. Think about how many people have spent their lives over the centuries going out daily, coming in the morning, selling their fish, the next evening, going out again, coming in, selling their fish if they caught any, day after day after day after day. I mean, their entire life is spent this way. And yet 4 men stand out in history. 4 men stand out because they responded to the call of Jesus Christ to catch men, to accept the higher vocation. And their names have become household names throughout the world, even today. Peter, James, John, and Andrew, 4 ordinary, plain, common fishermen. And yet, in obedience to the commands of Jesus, their lives have impacted the world in ways, man, they couldn't have begun to imagine. It's just startling to me as I think about what these small band of brothers and women around Jesus, what they ignited in their obedience to him. Peter recognized when he saw the multitude of fish that it wasn't about his skill. It wasn't his skill that brought the success. It was obedience to the command of the Lord. And so we too will come to understand that in our lives, that all our best efforts can often lead to empty nets. Isn't that true? Our best efforts often lead to, but when directed by the Lord, when in obedience, when we are listening, when we follow his instruction and his word in faith, our nets are filled and our lives are abundant with meaning. And so the story teaches us that number 4, God uses ordinary people to do extraordinary work. He makes ordinary people extraordinary. In using our own skills and efforts, trusting our own, this is not unlike what Pastor Dave was saying a couple of weeks ago. We often fall flat on our faces. And when asked, why did it work? Peter didn't try to say, well, it was the way I held my wrist. I just tried a new technique and, look at me, I'm an awesome fisherman. No, Peter's response was one of awe and wonder. And when we submit to God, let Jesus call the shots. When we obey, God gets glory. God gets glory. Because you say so, I will do it. Lord, I fished all night and I came up empty, but I will do this out of obedience. Because you said so, I will let down the nets. Had Peter followed his own instincts, he would have just gone home that day and returned the next evening to fish the same waters, figuring and hoping for, well, I'll have a better luck next time, I'll have a better day tomorrow. And he would have woke up stuck, still broke, still indebted, still unchanged. But because you said so, I will do it. So the story teaches us that we need to see ourselves in the light of the Lord, the recognition of who he is, and then see the truth about ourselves. The truth is, I am a sinful man, and I need cleansing. I need forgiveness. I need redemption. And the story teaches us that God can use anyone, even somebody like me, even somebody like you. The Lord can use anyone in his service to catch others for him. Common people like fishermen, carpenters, mechanics, grocery clerks, men, women, children, the rich, the poor, the broken, the indebted. As Paul, writing to the Corinthians, said, brothers and sisters, you may be familiar with this. This was the makeup of the church that Paul preached to. Brothers and sisters, think of what you were when you were called. Not many of you were wise by human standards. Not many were influential. Not many were of noble birth. But God chose the foolish things of the world to shame the wise. God chose the weak things of the world to shame the strong. God chose the lowly things of this world and the despised things, the things that are not, to nullify the things that are, so that no one may boast before him. So God uses people just like us, plain, ordinary people, to do extraordinary work. If we are faithful, Emmaus Church, if you and I are faithful and obedient and continue to walk in faith, even at times where it feels like God is killing us through the process, we do emerge, and God rewards that. And the potential is always there. Have you ever heard that saying? It's a bit of a cliche that I'm not sure how much I like it. You've ever heard people say, well, how does it go now? Yeah, so if you're a believer and you don't feel close to God, guess who moved? And they say, you did. But let me pose that another way. If you feel alone and distant from God, guess who moved? God moved, and you didn't follow. That's at least as legitimate a saying as the one we've heard and repeated. God moved, and you didn't follow. And that's why you feel a distance. The difference between failure and success, what's the Lord saying to you? I don't know what your circumstance is right now, but he might be saying to you, talk to your brother or talk to your mother one more time about Jesus. Cast the net. Yeah, but she's a hard person, or his heart is closed. I can't do it. I've been told not to talk about it anymore. cast the net. Do it in faith. Do it with grace. Season your words, but cast the net. God, I'm trying to do your will, and I just seem to be hitting futility after futility, failure after failure. Continue to listen. Continue to obey. Follow him. What is the Lord directing you to do? What maybe have you not tried because it doesn't make sense to you? Where are your doubts about Jesus' identity coming from? Because certain things don't add up to you in your reason and in your logic. Sometimes, well, always, a step of faith is required. It's not blind faith. It's not faith without education, but faith. So, if the Lord is directing you to move out into the deep and cast your nets, let them down. Let them down. See what he might do. And then I love this last verse. Then Jesus said to Simon, "Don't be afraid. From now on you will fish for people." So they pulled their boats up on the shore, left everything, and followed him. Left everything and followed him. It doesn't even sound like they brought the catch in. Again, in the old King James language, it said, they forsook all. Forsaking all, they left their boats and nets, and they followed him. Really, when it comes down to it, church, that's the only good way to live. That's the only way to live that, well, it may not always make sense, but we trust God. Trust him with whatever you need to trust him with now. Do we have communion out? Yeah, is it not too bad? Okay, awesome. Let's do that together. Any questions? Class? I'm putting it out there. What's that? Suffice to know that I'll catch them. And because I say so, it will be done. Well, are you interested in a barbecue sandwich? Yeah, oh, yeah. Yeah, okay. I'll tell you what. Next church barbecue, I might have a little bit of room left in my freezer. I'm going to have to catch a few of them, Costa. Yeah, well, I raise turkeys too. Hey, the emblems are out there now. Why don't you go ahead and grab one, and I'm going to pray. Oh, we're going to pass them. Cool. Even better. Everyday things. He said, I am the bread of life, which would have been startling because for all of history, most civilizations have relied on a single grain for their survival, be it yams or potatoes or root vegetables, be it rice, be it wheat. It'd be an astonishing thing to say to people in Jesus' time, I am the bread of life. Because no, bread itself was life. I mean, it took them, 40 years in the desert to learn that, and days of eating manna to get the picture on that. Didn't make sense to them. You know, when you rely so heavily on one grain, one harvest, that there's something better there. Jesus said, I am the bread of life. So let's partake of that together now. Jesus took the bread and he broke it, saying, this is my body broken for you. Jesus also took the cup, saying, this is my blood of the new covenant, shed for you. As often as you do this in remembrance of me. Father, thank you for redeeming us. Thank you for taking hopeless cases and filling them with hope. Father, fill our hearts with the humility to see ourselves as we are, to understand you and who you are, to obey you, to seek you with all our hearts, so that we might have real bread, abundant life, living water. Bless your church now. In Jesus' name we ask it. Amen. Amen. So thanks, everybody. I think our next move will be burgers and hot dogs, right? There's tons and tons, right? I saw some humongous salads as well, so do fill up.